Hello and welcome to the Sunday recap of Week 8. I'm Big Italy 42. He's Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11. Talk about all the action from Sunday, and I feel like you or I, one of us should be wearing a cast or a brace or something to kind of represent this week because it seemed like everyone got hurt. We saw 12 Chargers players got hurt. We saw Ricardo Laquette get knocked out completely. I mean, lots of injuries, lots of scary stuff yesterday. But hopefully the injuries missed your lineups. I certainly didn't miss mine. A lot of us went down with some injuries. But starting off with the Bucs and the Falcons here. Falcons, you mentioned here, had almost 500 yards of offense, only 20 points though. Julio Jones got back to doing Julio Jones things, 12 for $161 and a touchdown. But on the opposing side of this one, with no Vincent Jackson, I had a ton of Mike Evans, and I don't know that it was necessarily his fault. I kind of still blame Jameis Winston, but I mean, probably the biggest disappointment of the week for me.
Yeah, I mean, he only had 3 catches for 48 yards, 9 targets, but I mean, we were both expecting probably 12 to 15 just with this game shaking out the way it should have been. But I mean, Winston was efficient, no picks. He did get the job done. But I mean, this was a game outside of Julio Jones. There wasn't much going on. Freeman still a successful day with 120 yards, but just like last week, he lacked that touchdown, so he didn't really come across as a great play. I mean, this is a Falcons offense that we should expect to put up big numbers and enough to go around with guys like Jones and Freeman. But, I mean, it was really only Jones and Jacob Tamby even.
Yeah, I mean, 30 total points in 2 weeks now for Atlanta. Not what we were expecting there. Next up, Cardinals and Browns. Browns fans, once again, get up high, get excited. Up 20-7 against Carson Palmer. And unlike his Bengals days, he actually came back and dominated. And you kind of feel bad for him. I mean, I personally really don't. But it's a tough situation for the Browns. I mean, they play so well at times, and then it just seems like everything collapses late. I mean, this is now the third time they've blown a late lead. And really their only bright spot was Brian Hartline.
Yeah, I mean, he had 2 touchdown catches. I mean, that kind of sums up, I guess, what kind of week it was if Brian Hartline's catching 2 touchdowns. But yeah. Gary Barnidge is doing Gary Barnidge things, catches another touchdown. I didn't see any miraculous catch this week, but I'm sure he had one in there somewhere. I mean, Cardinals, they look good in the second half. They really bounced back. Carson Palmer, a big day, 374, 4 touchdowns. And with no John Brown, Michael Floyd took over, 4 catches, 106 yards and a touchdown. Saw 8 targets, so if that's the case going forward, I think Floyd should probably remain a viable value option.
Yeah, and he's really cheap, and that's kind of the frustrating thing with this situation. John Brown, like you mentioned here, was active but didn't play. Would have been nice to know that he certainly wasn't going to see the field because I would have been all aboard the Michael Floyd train. But either way, if he remains at around his same price, especially on FanDuel, where I think it was $4,935, I think on DraftKings this week. If he's anything close to that moving forward, then definitely going to be taking advantage next couple weeks. Next up, 49ers and the Rams, and we saw Carlos Hyde and Anquan Boldin both out. Rams, once again, were kind of a lock in cash games for me. I know for a lot of people there. And Todd Gurley, for the most part, didn't have a huge game, but broke off that 71-yard touchdown, and that's all you really needed. And then Tavon Austin stole one of his goal line touches. The play prior to it, though, where you saw Gurley line up in the backfield, it was such an obvious pass to Gurley. I mean, you saw it. As soon as they snapped the ball, runs out in the flat. I mean, you know it's coming. Of course he lost a couple yards. But Tavon Austin, though, still not a guy I feel comfortable about using a roster spot on. But, I mean, his speed in itself definitely makes him a viable option.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a random day when Austin goes for 2 touchdowns. And the thing was, I mean, the Rams were up for the entire game, and then Austin gets a touchdown late in the game like that. I mean, come on. Yeah. I was expecting them to just hand the ball off because, I mean, even Trey Mason got 15 carries. So, I mean, they were just trying to kill this game. I really wish I would have turned to the Rams defense. I think I had a lot of Cardinals and a lot of Seattle, but the Rams were an obvious play again. And if you didn't use them, I mean, they were one of the higher scoring defenses of the week yet again.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely give you that nice high floor. I mean, they get after the quarterback so well. Yeah. Speaking of getting after the quarterback, nobody got after the quarterback in this next one. This is the story of the week. I was one of those people deciding on Willie Snead versus Nate Washington versus Michael Crabtree, other value plays. Should have gone with Willie Snead. I'm not going to lie to you and say that I did in my cash games. I wish I had. Pretty much if you had pieces of this game in your cash games, especially one of the 13 touchdowns from the 2 quarterbacks, you won a bunch of money. If you didn't, you probably didn't do great. Breeze with 7 touchdowns, Eli with 6. And, I mean, this game, one of the crazier games we've seen, I mean, in the last decade even. 91 points in this game.
Yeah, I mean, this was unbelievable. And, right off the bat, I mean, Breeze had, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns before the half even ended. I mean, Eli, Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham's not a guy I'm always really on. I still like DeAndre Hopkins and Julio Jones and Cash, but we know he has his upside, but we do see his down weeks, and this wasn't one of them.
Yeah, I mean, 3 touchdowns, only 130 yards. I mean, we say only because relative to this game, that's not a huge number. But Benjamin Watson had more yards than him. But, I mean, now moving forward, Benjamin Watson's the guy who's been really heavily involved the last 3 weeks. And moving forward, we know Drew Brees loves his tight ends, and apparently he loves every one of these players because it seemed like every single – I mean, even Marcus Colston had over 100 yards and touchdowns. So I feel like if you or I had gotten into a Saints uniform this week, we would have at least had 100 yards and a touchdown because everyone did. So
yeah, even Spiller, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, even C.J. Spiller. I mean, if you played C.J. Spiller, then shame on you for playing C.J. Spiller. But you got a touchdown, so you got lucky there a little bit. Vikings and Bears here. Matt Forte, knee injury. One of seemingly every player in the NFL that got hurt. Jeremy Langford filled in, like you mentioned, and he was okay, not great. Alshon Jeffrey, another big game. Adrian Peterson, kind of the Devontae Freeman type of game here. Yardage, yes. Touchdowns, no. And Stephon Diggs, another phenomenal play to score a touchdown. Looked like he's going to get tackled after, what was it, about a 15-yard gain. And then just that nasty cut and got in the end zone again.
Yeah. I mean, Stephon Diggs was unbelievable. And the Vikings, 5-2, moving up the NFC there. But, I mean, Diggs is the guy. I mean, he's probably the only Minnesota player I actually feel comfortable using right now because Peterson's price is so high. And it's going to stay there just because of his name. It's Adrian Peterson. But, I mean, 100 yards yet again, but no touchdowns, so it's a little disappointing. Alshon Jeffrey continues to dominate since coming back from injury. And I don't think his DK price really went up that much this week, and he was still pretty cheap.
Yeah, barely 6K there. I mean, still under 8K on FanDuel, still not a bad price either. Chargers and Ravens, this one was one that we expected a ton out of. Steve Smith, Keenan Allen, guys I had in cash games all over the place. Keenan Allen got a touchdown, then left the game with injury. Steve Smith did not get a touchdown, then left the game with injury. So that was kind of the state of my week here with these guys. Danny Woodhead, 3 targets in this game, despite the fact that we did see Keenan Allen leave in the first half. Malcolm Floyd was the guy in this one. We know he's a deep threat. Hasn't really had that breakout game yet this week. Caught 2 touchdowns, but still not a guy that is more than a 1 GPP filler for me moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Floyd's that boomer bust guy. I expected. I mean, this game featured a good amount of points, but it was kind of non-relevant to us. I mean, Melvin Gordon rushed the ball 18 times for 54 yards. That was kind of odd to see him even get over 10 carries this week. Forsett, another tilting week of using him with the goal line situations there, and Flacco and his QB sneaks. But Justin Tucker, he was the show. 18 points there from his FanDuel kicker self.
Yeah, you gotta love that. I was a Josh Brown owner this week. Team scored 49 points, and I got 7 extra points. Nailed all 7 of them, but that's not going to get it done at the kicker spot there. Bengals and Steelers. This next one, another one we thought was going to be a big-time, high-scoring game. And actually, when I was talking on the Slate Breakdown with Denny Carter, he said that someone had tweeted him saying this was going to be a 16-13 game just because we think it'll be a shootout. And we both laughed at that. And then, coincidentally, Steelers didn't hold up their end of the bargain, only scoring 10. But Bengals with 16 points. Really, this one, a pretty disappointing game. Antonio Brown got off to a hot start. Roethlisberger obviously threw the touchdown to him early. Le'Veon Bell, another injury in this one. He got hurt too. Really just not a lot from a fantasy perspective outside of A.J. Green here.
Yeah, I mean, this is something going forward. Le'Veon Bell done for the year. So, D'Angelo Williams, he's looked decent in his absence in the first 2 games he was suspended. He came in and rushed the ball well. But still, I think it's just going to be Big Ben, Antonio Brown, Martavis Bryant throwing the ball well. Also, Heath Miller, 10 catches for 105 yards. That's not something I would expect every week.
Yeah,
he's usually 3 catches, 35, and a touchdown maybe at the most.
Yeah, it seemed like that was kind of the Bengals' game plan there was don't get beat deep by Brown and Bryant. If you want to get underneath passes to Heath Miller all day, you can get him, and that's what they did. But, I mean, certainly bend but don't break definitely worked this week for the Bengals. Titans and Texans here. Zach Mettenberger was there once again. We keep expecting maybe he'll pay off that cheap salary. He certainly didn't. Really, this one was kind of a no thanks on the Titans side, as it usually is. We did see Brian Hoyer do great things like he always does, get his 2 touchdown passes, kind of just beat his salary just a little bit, and that's kind of what you expect out of Hoyer moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to continue to stay at that price, 250 yards, 3 touchdowns is what we're going to see. Nate Washington was a terrific value play this week, and he paid off 74 yards and a touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins still another double-digit target game, so we're going to see that probably for the rest of the way as long as Washington comes back healthy because he did leave the game.
Yeah, and that DeAndre Hopkins touchdown was, I mean, that was mean. It was candy from a baby right behind him. He just kind of just snatched it. I mean, that was beautiful. Next up, Jets and the Raiders. Not beautiful. Ryan Fitzpatrick went down with an injury, a thumb injury. Then ended up having to come back because Geno Smith, as we know, soft body Geno Smith, got hit, left the game. Fitzpatrick came in, didn't look comfortable at all just for a minute. Geno Smith came back in. I mean, this one, the Raiders just dominated this one. It was not pretty. Derek Carr, I mean, if it weren't for that Saints game, you kind of erase that game from your memory, then Derek Carr was easily the top quarterback this week. 4 touchdowns, 300 yards, and that's a good Jets defense. I mean, yes, Tom Brady had a good game against him, but not as good as Carr did even. So the Raiders, offensively at least, they look like they're for real.
Yeah, I'm really liking this passing attack. And we kind of knew Amari Cooper would be taking out of things with Revis on him. But, I mean, all these other guys, Andre Holmes, 2 touchdowns. I mean, even Lat Murray, over 100 yards of rushing yards there. So, but Michael Crabtree had a big day, 7 catches, 102 yards, and a touchdown there. I'm telling you, this Raiders team, they're definitely sneaky GPP plays because no one really buys into them each week, but this passing attack is for real.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And then this next one was ugly, really, in all ways. If you didn't have anybody in this game, you probably did just fine. Seahawks and Cowboys, neither team probably deserved to win this game. It was 13-12. It was not pretty. Maybe if you had a couple kickers, if you had Stephen Hauschka, maybe. But either way, I mean, this one was just both defenses played well. Both offenses struggled. We saw Dez Bryant making a fool of himself, screaming at the referees in this one. I mean, that was the exciting part of this game, was Dez Bryant getting mad.
Yeah, there was not much to this one. I think this was one we could just X out because we were like, no, there's going to be nothing here. Outside of maybe Marshawn Lynch, he was a bit disappointing, although he did have 21 carries, which is encouraging going forward. And same thing with McFadden. I mean, they 20 carries there. And, in a better matchup, he probably would have had bigger numbers. So I still think McFadden could actually be a decent play behind this line going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And then speaking of ugly games, Packers and Broncos coming into this game, I honestly was more of a believer in the Packers than the Broncos. I know Broncos, obviously they show themselves as the best defensive unit. We already kind of knew that. But that offense had been terrible. But Broncos got back to the old school type of ways, like they were talking last night, the late years John Elway numbers where you rely on the running game, short passes to the tight ends. And, I mean, Demaryius Thomas just feasted. Once Sam Shields went out early, I mean, it was ugly. It was going to be. And Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, everyone was talking about how Rodgers has been great. He really hasn't been. I saw a tweet earlier today, said 5 of his last 7 games had less than 2 or less touchdown passes now. So Aaron Rodgers is kind of I'm not playing him until he goes off kind of way, but definitely going to make him a nice GPP play because he will be low owned, but just hasn't had that big time upside. Jordy Nelson looking like a bigger and bigger loss for them by the week, really.
Yeah, I mean, especially since that running game hasn't really been working outside of when Starks gets going and then disappoints us all because we all had Lacy. But even Eddie Lacy found the end zone, just trolling us all, even though it wasn't a great matchup. But Starks didn't get any carries. I think he had 2 this week. So maybe possibly Lacy's healthy after the bye week going forward. He's the guy. But I can't go back on that train yet again because he's burned me way too many times. And I mean, the Denver rushing game was very good this week. Anderson and Hillman both get on the action. I was surprised.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that's what we're going to expect moving forward. I mean, we saw it near the end of last year. They were relying on the running game quite a bit. And I think it was just maybe a lack of confidence thing with those two guys. But definitely looks like it's going to be a 2-headed attack there. And Manning able to make, just enough throws to get it done. I mean, he looked good last night. I don't mean that as a criticism. But, this Broncos team looks pretty scary moving forward. It's going to be tough to score on him. You saw this game with 17-0. I went ahead and turned it off. was like, I could watch something more entertaining than this game, and it didn't get any better after that. So.
No, I had the Mets choking away another late lead, so that's what I watched.
Oh man, that Eric Hosmer thing! Everyone's calling him a genius. That was
that
was dumb. He got lucky.
Yeah, he just ran.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I won't say nothing to lose, but I don't know. Either way, worked out well for him. Congrats to the Royals. Congrats to the Broncos, too, I guess, because that was a pretty good performance. But anyway, that was the last game of the week. That's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got lots of other great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.